So my name is Cheyenne Hiapo Perry. I actually grew up in the beautiful leeward coast of Oahu, in Waianae. But moved here in the mid '90s and just really fell in love with the moku puni of Hawaii Island, and then kind of developed more of a relationship with Hilo after living in Kaumana. And then I also went to UH Hilo to get a degree in marine science. So became very familiar with Hilo, the moku of Hilo, and just learning about all the different stories and legends those areas. And I do work on Mauna Kea. So my the Mauna that I really connect to is Mauna Kea or Mauna Kea. And there's several legends about that. We could actually, if you guys want, we can. There's a couple more legends that we can talk about that I didn't include in the presentation. Um, and then the waters that I identify with, the vai, is which is interesting because vai also means blood. It's life-giving fluid, not just water. Um, the vai that I connect to is the Wailuku River. We do a lot of our work at the Po'ovai or the headwaters of the Wailuku River, and we do like restoration. So we plant native trees strategically across the upper landscape. So around 6,000 foot elevation, kind of Mana Road area. If you guys have ever been there. All right. So this first slide here. So we're looking at the cultural geography of Hilo. You can see those are all the different moku of the island. So that's kind of it's a land division. It's a bigger land division. Kind of in that same class with the Ahupua'a. So within the moku of Hilo, I think there's something like 100. There's over 100 ahu on kalamai. Um, Altogether on the island, there's something like 300 or 400 ahupua'a. But I think that in Hilo, we're looking at around 70 or between 70 and 80 around different ahupua'a in Hilo. But we're mostly going to talk about the Hilo in the town area. Right, so the whole island, we just happen to have most islands upon themselves, like Oahu is a moku, but because we're so big on our island, we've got these 6 different moku, and so we're going to talk about Hilo today. Hilo is broken up into a couple other ones. These are called okana. So these are the na Hilo, and we're going to have some maps kind of showing you guys what they look like, but they're Hilo Paliku, Hilo One, and Hilo Hanakahi. And those are the Hilos. So this is Hilo Paliku. So next time you guys are out and you're checking out the basically the lands above, kind of north of Wailuku River, Hilo Paliku goes from Wailuku River to a place called Kaula Gulch. So if you guys are familiar with Keanakolu Cabin, it's the gulch that runs along there and goes all the way down to the ocean. And so that is considered Hilo Paliku, and Paliku means of the upright cliffs or the erect cliffs. So that's Hilo of the erect cliffs. And you can see it if you go check out by Queen Liliuokalani Park. The old name for that area is Maka Oku. If you look down, you can see it as you look towards Wailuku River and the bridge. So Hilo Paliku. Hilo One is basically bayfront. And so that goes from Wailuku River to Wailoa. And Hilo One means sand, but it's also a poetical way of saying land or aina. Hold on, sorry, my dog. These mongooses in the front, they're harassing her. You don't like them, you're gonna have to let them go and chase them away. Yeah, so that's Hilo. A really culturally rich area. If you look at the ahupua'a of Hilo, most of the ahupua'a are like they're all centralized in this area, and then we have a bigger one called like Waiakea, and then to the north there's another big one called Pi'ihonua, and so those actually go up to Humu'ula, which caps all of our ahupua'a in Hilo. And then we have Hilo Hanakahi. So this goes from Wailoa to a place called Mawai, which is Mawai means fisher. It's also the name for the leaf when the segments split, and so it's a fissure in the kalo leaf and the lao, as well as a fissure in the landscape. Yeah, so it goes all the way across. Hanakahi means do the work one time, And so Hanakahi, if you listen to a lot of the mele and different songs of the Keaukaha area, they'll talk about the chief Hanakahi. And so he was known to be able to bring the community and the people together to get work done kind of efficiently. So, and there's a lesson in that, the Hanakahi. You don't want to keep on doing the same thing, so you try and get it done well the first time. And then I'm sure everybody knows the different names and the meanings for Hilo. One meaning for Hilo is the Hilo moon, and so that's the first crescent moon after Muku. So Muku is the no moon or the black moon. And then often we've got around 30 different moon phases, and they're all named. And then all of the moon phases kind of have a different practice associated with it. So certain types of fishing or planting might be appropriate for those different moon phases. Yeah. So basically, we got a name for every part of the moon phase. We're gonna tell a story about Hina pretty soon, but maybe one of the concepts to kind of think about. So when we talk about the moon, the name for the moon is Mahina. The Hina means to recline or lay down. The opposing force to that Hina energy is Ku. So remember how we talked about the Pali Ku? So Ku is erect, but it's also it's also synonymous with masculine energy. So really, you have this balancing power of Ku and Hina, and that's within all people and beings. If you look at this bottom slide here, the other type of Hilo might be Hilo the navigator. So he was a very famous Polynesian navigator. So it's possible that Hilo was also may have been named after him. And then the other type of Hilo is this la'ile, and so this is a type of twist. It's the way one of the ways you can make a lei. And so when you make this type of lei, for those who have made it, you kind of twist it, but then as you're twisting and making the lei, you go against the grain, and then it kind of curls into like a DNA or like a helix. And so that's called Hilo, the name of that braid. And then of course, la'i or any lei made out of tea leaf is the ano, or the meaning behind la'i is raw mana or raw power. So if you receive a la'i lei, that's they're thinking that you're a powerful person, powerful personality. So the main story we're going to tell today is about Hina and the mo'okuna. So Hina was a Tahitian woman that came, and she ended up living underneath the Waianuinui Falls, and she got into a conflict with the mo'okuna. Mo'o is an interesting concept. Mo'o means succession or continuum. And so for those of you who have heard the term mo'olelo, meaning story, mo'olelo, when you break it down, means the continuation of tongue. Yeah, so lelo is tongue. And kuna is, they actually still have kuna in places like Aotearoa, which is New Zealand. Kuna is a freshwater eel. So mo'okuna was a freshwater dragon that guarded the Wailuku River. And Wailuku means the devastating waters. Already, right, we know the place name, so we're like probably going to think twice before we go into these waters, just to be careful, because we know the luku part of it could mean devastation in some way and injury. Yeah, so here's an image of them kind of beefing it out. Wait. Yeah. And so, you know what? Let's go back one more. I think what we'll do is I'll go ahead and tell the story, and then we'll look at all the geography for the story. And so we've got Hina. So Hina, she's beautiful. She's a newcomer to Hawaii Island. She comes here and she takes up residence in the Waianuinui, the waterfall. And she basically comes here because she wants to make kapa, which is the clothing. And so the way you make kapa is out of this plant called vauke, paper mulberry. And so she finds this this type of vauke on the island of Maui that has, when it grows in the Wailuku River, it will pick up all the shiny stars and the moonlight and the glimmer at night. And then when she makes kapa from that, it actually transfers to the kapa. And so when you wear the kapa, it's got all glitters and shiny and bling on it. And of course, the people of Hilo have never seen this before, so they're really, they want it. Everybody wants to have this shiny kapa that's made from this vauke. And so she comes to Wailuku River and starts to plant the vauke along the sides of the Wailuku River and starts to make kapa from that. But the thing with Hina, she's a little bit OCD and kind of compulsive behavior with kapa, especially. And so she ends up pounding kapa nonstop for hours and hours, day and night. And so the kama'aina, or the person that's there when she comes there, is the mo'okuna. And so mo'okuna's job is to kind of keep the waters clean, keep the fresh water flowing, and keep it moving. That's what he does. That's his job. And he can't sleep, and so he's getting really frustrated with Hina because she just moved here. To him, she's not being respectful of his space, and so he goes down to her and he says, "Hey, Hina, I know you just moved here. You're kind of new to the area. You're the Malihini. Could you kind of keep it down? I got to work, and I'm getting really tired, and so I'm not able to really do my job." And Hina's like, "Yeah, okay, no problem." And so Mo goes up further up on the Wailuku River where he lives, and he's doing his work. And then the nighttime comes around, and he's trying to sleep again, and it's the same thing. It's that tapping. And for those of you who are familiar with kapa, the process is a very steady, kind of like a thumping noise. And so that happens all night long. And he goes down again and says, "Hey, Hina, this is I can't rest, and I really need to rest to do my work. Could you please stop doing that?" She's like, "Okay, no problem." So he goes up, and third night happens again. So he's had enough. He's frustrated. He's got bags under his eyes. He's tired, bloodshot eyes. He comes down. He's like, "I'm gonna take care of this." So he starts pushing these big boulders over the side of the waterfall to dam the water so that the water rises up and drowns Hina. And so that happens. Hina knows she's in trouble, so the water is rising, and so she sends out this thing called aupua, which is a warning cloud, sends it into the sky. And she calls her family, which is Maui, her son. And so the aupua goes up. Maui sees it. He knows she's in trouble. He happens to be on the island of Maui. And he takes 4 strokes. He gets in his va'a, or his canoe, 4 strokes of the paddle, and he's right at the mouth of the Wailuku River. And so he puts the va'a, he parks it there and moors it, and then heads up to find out what's going on. By the way, that structure that va'a is still there. So he goes up there and he sees his mom, Hina. He says, "Mom, what's going on? What's the problem?" Hina says, "That mo'o is messing with me. I need you to take care of it." No questions asked, right? So Maui's like, "Okay, I get it." Runs up there and he challenges the mo'o. In mo'o's own house, goes up to the mo'o and says, what's your problem with my mother? Let's go. And just immediately starts to go into fight mode, right? You're like, "Yeah, you want to beef? Let's go." And why not? And so the mo'o is like kind of taken aback. He's like, "Oh, well, I'm here and I'm older and I've been here longer. And how dare this young guy come up here and challenge me? I just can't believe it." But Mo'o's been around for a while, so he does know some moves. And so they start fighting up and down the Wailuku River, making all of these. If you guys go to Wailuku River, you can see these big round kind of plunge pools. That's where they're standing kind of toe to toe and fighting. So they're moving up the Wailuku River. They get to this area right above Waiale, which is that waterfall that's right above the Pi'i Honua Bridge. Gets up above there, and then the mo'o's tired because he's older, so he goes to try and hide in a cave. And Maui takes his spear, which is called a ihe, and just pushes it right through the rock and pierces the backside of mo'o. There used to be a land structure there, a land bridge called the Puka o Maui, and that is where the puka was made from the spear entering into the earth. It catches him, and so Mo'o yelps and jumps up and runs down, and they start to fight again, and they move up and down the river, up and down the river. They get to this place called Pe'epe'e. Again, Mo'o is tired, and so he seeks to try and hide again. And so he hides under this waterfall, and Maui reaches in and grabs it by the tail and starts to club him in the back, in his haunch, and pull him out. By the way, Pe'epe'e or Pe'epe'e falls means to camouflage or to hide. As they're coming down, Mo'o knows that he doesn't have much energy, but he knows that in a fight he's got to kind of make his move. So he jumps up and takes Maui by the throat and starts to crush the life of him and knocks him over right into the Pe'epe'e Falls, Boiling Pots area is another name for the area right now. They get into the fight, and Maui knows that he's losing consciousness, and once he's unconscious, he'll be at the mercy of the mo'o. So Maui reaches out to his family, and so Maui is also equated with he is the discoverer of fire in a lot of the Pacific mo'olelo or legends, and so there's a natural connection to other types of fire like earth fire, and so he calls out to his aunt Pele. So Pele, seeing that he's in trouble, starts to throw these big molten lava balls from Kilauea to the Wailuku River. And one of those balls catches Mo'o right on his back and breaks his back. So he breaks his back, and Mo'o releases Maui. So Maui comes up and grabs Mo'o, drags him down the river right to in front of Hina's cave, and then deals the death blow, which turns Mo'o into this giant stone that's still at the base of the Waianui Falls. And to this day, the water continues to fall upon the Mo'o's head as a reminder of that battle with Maui. Now, this might be a little different from some of the mo'olelo that you've learned before about the Wailuku River and Mo'okuna and Hina and Maui. Was actually told to us by Kekuhi. And really, if we had time, we might have a little bit of time, but I'm gonna teach you guys a little bit about different kiʻi or different images. Kiʻi means petroglyph, imagery, pictures, and that type of thing. But really, this story is just designed to make everyone think about the narrative and about the different stories that are being told that are out there. And maybe if we have time, we can talk about the kind of what are the elements of this particular story that you connected with today. And so here's the Va'ao Maui. You can see this is off of the third bridge, I believe. So Va'ao Maui, right at the mouth of the Wailuku River. And we got Waianui Nui, which is the waterfall. And so that's the Anui Nui, the rainbow that's actually created from the waterfall. So if you go in the morning at the right time, there'll be a nice rainbow there. And then she lived inside that cave, which is called Kiana o Hina. Right? And I still haven't quite figured out where Mo'o is, but some believe he's maybe in this area here, but I've also heard that he's further downstream. And some people have thought that the Va'ao Maui could be the Mo'o as well. And then this is Pe'epe'e, right? We talked about, which is the boiling pots area. Pe'epe'e means to camouflage or hide. So this is one of the areas that Mo'o hid from Maui. Okay. And so that kind of takes care of that story. We'll just briefly go over a couple of these. Maui is also the one who discovered fire. And so we do have a legend about that. There are three, for those of you who are familiar with the Halai Hills or Hala'i Hills, that's kind of Mauka of Sac and Save in the downtown area. There's actually 3 pu'u up there in that area. Pu'u means like a cinder cone, but it can also mean pu'u is anything that kind of stands out. So like, your knuckle can be a pu'u, Adam's apple can be a pu'u. But there's 3 pu'u up there, and one of them is named Pu'u Opeapea. Opeapea is meaning the native bat. And so this is the area where Maui had discovered fire. And the way that he did it, and so it's interesting when you're talking about Maui, ui means to stir up or to activate or to ask the question or to inquire. So a lot of the Maui stories are about technology, different types of technology. And so this is the story about him and how he took fire from the alai, which is I think mud hen might be another way to say it in English. But it's the way that he has the mud hen remember that he took the fire is he marked him with a red spot on the top of his head. And so anytime you see those alai ula, that's the remembrance of Maui taking fire from them. That's a funny story. If we want to get more into that, we can do that later. And this is where it's at. So the area. So Halai Hill is kind of down in this area. This is where the prison is. Up here is like 7-Eleven off of Waianui. But this is all in here. These are the other two pu'us. So there's a pu'uhonu, and then there's a pu'u opeapea. This is actually the area where they're doing all of that construction. If you guys have seen, they're bulldozing and kind of doing all these things, which is another thing to think about. So we have all these stories that are kind of connected to all these different landscapes, and this landscape is being converted and changed. So the story may be lost over time. And then there's a story about Hina Ke'ahi and Hina Kulu'ua. And in that story, that also happens on Halai Hill. But Hina Ke'ahi, there's a famine, and Hina Ke'ahi is the chiefess of her people on that pu'u. And so the famine is lasting for many weeks, and the people are sick and weakly, and so she decides to bring them food. And so what she does is she has them create an imu, but in the imu or underground oven, she has them place. So first of all, the people think that they're gonna imu them, because when you make an imu, you got to put something in, right, to make food. So they're not too stoked about it, but they make the imu for her. And then she tells them, well, go and gather bananas and taro and fish, but only with the imagery in your head. So don't get the real banana, but the essence of the banana. And so they all bring that up to the top of Halai Hill, and they put it into the imu. She walks into the imu and lays down and tells them, I'll be open the imu in 3 days, and lays down. When she lays down, they cover up with all the imaginary ai or food. Over the 3 days, there's a bunch of springs that pop up between Halai Hill and the ocean with fresh water, punabai. And if you look at those areas, look at the street names, there's all these different puna names, different springs. And then on the 3rd day, they open up the imu, and it's full of food. And then they're able to survive through that famine. Now her sister sees that, Kulu'ua, and is jealous. And the Kulu'ua, and the other thing to think about is the names, because that gives you a lot of insight into the function. So, but Hina Kulu'ua, she's jealous. She's like, oh, there she goes, trying to show me up again. And so she's like, I'm gonna do the exact same thing. If she can do it, I can do it. So she does the same thing, and for her people, and opens up the imu, goes through the exact same protocol. But when she goes into the imu and is covered up, nothing happens. The only thing that happens is over the course of the 3 days, this steam escapes out of the imu and becomes a cloud that sits over that pu'u, just mauka of pu'u halai or Halai Hill. And that water, that ua, can still be still present to this day. So sometimes if you look up there, you'll see that there's a cloud formation just above the pu'u area. And that is the kinolau or body form of Hina Kulu'ua. Story in that too, right? Jealousy. And if we look here, so this is kind of looking towards Mauna Kea. There's the Mauna Kea right here. You guys are probably familiar with ahupua'a. So the ahupua'as kind of go from Mauka Makai. You see these natural bands that are created. These are called, this one's called ko'olo right in here. There's Vau Lono right in here. This is Kuahivi, the very tip of the Mauna. Sorry. And those are called Navau or Ano. And so that is kind of how nature arranges herself. And then the ahupua'a is more of it's a political boundary so that we know the separation between our different ahupua'a. And really, it's interesting in the sense of climate change, because the lesson that is one of the lessons to be learned from the ahupua'a system is kind of living within your means. And so it was very natural and normal. The reason that we have these ahupua'a systems like Omauka to Makai is that everyone that's in the ahupua'a has access to those resources to build canoe, to make houses for themselves, but they are able to gather sustainably because it's within their own zone. And then the pu'us, halai and stuff are kind of like up in this area. Oh, actually, come on, right in this area. And then that's just kind of to the left side of Wailuku River. So we got those three pu'us up there. Yeah. And then finally, one of the older legends, we have a lot of Maui legends and Hina in Hilo. But there's one story about Maui pulling. He feels really sad for his people because if they want to go to the island of Maui from Hawaii Island, they have to get in a ba'a and paddle across the channel, which can be dangerous. And so he has this idea that he's gonna pull the islands together. So he takes his magic fish hook, he gets with all his brothers, they get in a ba'a, and they go over to the island of Maui. He attaches his hook to the island and starts pulling it across to Hilo Island. But he tells his brothers, I'm using magic to do this, and so it's very important that none of us in this ba'a look back. If anybody looks back, then that'll break the spell. And wouldn't you know it, one of the brothers looks back, and the island of Maui snaps off of the fish hook and goes back to where the current location is. But what happens a little bit of meat. If you guys, for those who have fished a lot, sometimes you get a little bit of eel or meat from the fish that's stuck on the hook. And so that happened here as well. And that particular piece of meat is moku'ola. But look how close, which is the island of life or Coconut Island. Look how close they got. Oh man, so close. So yeah. So if he had gotten the moku'ola just to touch Makauku, Maui and Big Island would be connected. Ah, shucks. Let's see. So I'm gonna end the show right there, unless we want to talk about kiʻi, which is something we learned in Halauʻuhi with Kekuhi. End the show. I wanted to give some time if there were any questions or anything. If you'd like to, we can talk about kiʻi. Kiʻi is just a way to analyze different stories and kind of look at different perspectives. I think a lot of today's issues that we have is, especially politically, is you've got two parties and they're just kind of like. But what the kiʻi is designed to do is really teach people how to look at stories and then also take those stories in and kind of be different people and then kind of change your perspectives, kind of open up your perspectives and your viewpoints, and through that process creating partnership instead of not partnership. So we could talk about that, but I wanted to give some time if anybody had any questions or wanted to talk about any of the stories that we just discussed.
Do you guys have any questions for Cheyenne about the moʻolelo or the cultural geography of Hilo?
Yeah, we're really lucky. I mean, Hilo is so rich in story. If you guys ever wanted to later down the road, we could do it in person, and we could all just do it together, which is really, it's very powerful. I think that storytelling is such a natural way for us to communicate with each other, and it's just not, people don't use it anymore. It's kind of like, it's just not doesn't have it should, but it just doesn't have the same kind of status as when we were sitting around the fire and trying to capture different ideas and different values and ways to live.
I think as soon as coronavirus is over, we will choose to go outside.
Right. Well, I mean, there's a story in COVID too.
Yes. Do you guys have any questions for Cheyenne before we talk about kiʻi?
Okay. Well, we could talk about kiʻi, and then so the kiʻi is a tool that you can use to just to study different stories, and it's kind of interesting. The stories have been a big part of my life, my whole life, but then working in Halauʻuhi has kind of given tools to kind of look at stories a little differently. So a lot of the process of looking at the stories has to do with the deconstruction of a story and then the reconstruction of a story. So we do see a lot of stories where you get different point of view. What is that one with? It's a Disney one, but she has the wings, and there was like, is it Cinderella? But they just basically show her point of view instead. So it's always interesting, and even when you're looking at Mo'okuna and Maui, it is perspective because the first story that I heard about that story, Tinkerbell, close. No, it's the other one. She has like the horns. Um, Angelina Jolie. What's the name of that movie?
Oh, that's
Maleficent.
sleeping. Yeah.
Maleficent. So Maleficent is from her point of view, but the only story we had heard before that was from Cinderella's point of view and the royal family's point of view. You know, ooh, she made me go to sleep. She was evil. She made everybody go to sleep. And then that prince. Oh wait, no, Calamai. Sorry, my wife corrected me. That's Sleeping Beauty. But it is Maleficent is that other perspective from her point of view. So even when we're talking about the Mo'okuna and Hina and Maui, you're really looking at the story, the narrative being put out there from different points of view. It doesn't make either one right or wrong, but but it's a differing way of looking at things. Yeah. I'm glad my wife watches Disney. She can. No, she's like, no, that's Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty. Man, Disney like controls everything nowadays too. They got Marvel, Star Wars. Yeah. Okay, so we'll talk about the kiʻi, and then maybe that'll give us something if we think about the stories that we've been talking about, and if you have any questions about the kiʻi. And so can everybody see that? The title
Looks good.
slide? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, we learned this with Halauhia with Kekuhi. So she's one of the Kanaka Oles, really well-known hula family out of Keaukaha and Panaewa. So these are the Naki'i. Ki'i is, like I said earlier, they can mean petroglyph. They're any type of imagery. And so the general attitude or intention towards the idea of these ki'i, so just kind of treat them with respect. Their name is Akea, Honua, and Iaka. And so an easy way to remember that is the acronym AHI, which is funny because that's fire. And these are scales to decipher ki'i, and this is a continuous process. So if you have a story that you really enjoy, you might think that if you have time, you can go back and look at that story again, and then kind of think about these different ki'i as you're rereading the story. And so, but ultimately, what the question you should be asking yourself is, what do these different ki'i or imagery in the story have to teach you as an individual, as a being? Right. So we got the Akea. So these are the big ki'i. So these are world scale ki'i. So when you have an image in your head of sacrifice or birth or Mother Earth, those are all things that human beings that live on Earth can identify with. So that would be a ki'i Akea. That includes things like the moon, which is often equated with femininity and the tides, right? And that's kind of worldwide. All humans kind of see it that way. The sun is kind of heat and knowledge and light. Also runs all the global processes that we have, including like the weather through the heating process. And then the idea of grandfather and grandmother. And those ki'i are often someone that will come into a story and help them along the way, like Obi-Wan Kenobi is a good example. So here we have Luke Skywalker, who's entering out into this new space, something that's very different for him. And along the way, he's able to meet up with someone who can mentor him and help him through the process. And I would almost think maybe Yoda has that kind of ki'i as well, as a grandfather. Ki'i Honua, so this is the next scale down, it's macro scale. And so in the Ki'i Honua, when you're looking at different stories, the space is the determining factor for understanding that ki'i. So that would be an example that could be the Pacific region. So when we talk about Maui, that is something that's understandable to those of us that live in the Pacific and Pacific cultures, but it might not be the same. The ki'i of Maui might not be the same in Russia, for example. And it's recognizable to that community. An example would be like Wakea with Sky Father, and that connection to Papa here in Hawaii. Corn for the Americas, Kalo for Hawaii, And then also like things like the medical healing profession. So when you see this different imagery of like the serpent and the rod, that's also a kiʻi honua. And so that's like a certain type of profession. So that would cover all of your nation to village life ways. Some things that would be that kind of kiʻi for us would be the ocean, which is something that we all identify with. The idea of hula, va'a, or canoe, and kalo or taro. So these are things that are all recognizable to us in our Pacific community. Kiʻi honua. The last one, and the one that I find the most interesting and the most magical, is the kiʻi iaka. The iaka is the reflection or the shadow. It's the image or the likeness. And so this kiʻi is specific to you as a person. So when you're reading the story, and an example might be I'm reading Harry Potter, and Harry Potter and his crew, they go down into the bank, and they, through their smarts, they kind of are able to rescue this dragon that's been stuck down there and guarding the treasure, and break out of the earth in the dark and out into the light, and the dragon can finally fly again. And that kind of reminds me of a situation where we found a stray dog, and we were able to bring the stray dog in, and that just happened to me today, for example. And then so that story kind of reminds me of that character of being able to help this being kind of escape the dark. So yeah, so it's personal, it's about you. The iaka is also the embryo at the moment of conception. So it is the beginning of an idea or an image that's within your brain. It is special and magical, and it has to do with you and your life. Not only with you, but also like in the now. So like today, how does that imagery and that connection to that story connect to you as a person? It is not a third party relationship. It goes beyond entertainment, and it becomes something where you connect to the story, and through the story, there change happens within you as well. And so the question is like, is the story about them and not me? Is that relationship something separate from who I am as a being? And the reason it's so magical is it's based on your experiences and your intuition and kind of your personal interpretation of the imagery. Yeah, so it's a reflection of you. Really cool. And that is it. And so those are the three not kiʻi. And those are different ways to kind of analyze different stories. Anybody have any questions or about anything that we talked about today? Did you hear anything new? Any of the concepts were new to you, or things that you hadn't heard before about Hilo?
Definitely.
I'm super interested because I work
Thank
on
you
Mauna Kea.
so much.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say thank you so much for sharing with us. It's so amazing. I'm like speechless.
Cheyenne,
So good.
do you think I have a question. Class goes till 10:45, right, John?
Correct.
Okay. Do you think you could share like your like professional development pathway? Like what got you interested in conservation, and what you did to get to where you are today, and what you do at the Mauna Kea Watershed Alliance?
Okay, sure. Yeah, so I grew up in Waianae. I got lucky, and I got to go to Kamehameha schools on my freshman year. So I was there for 4 years. Kind of came from a very poor family. We had a lot of ups and downs, and then ended up I joined the military when I was 17. So I became an infantryman, a paratrooper, for 4 years. Mostly for the college money, but also just to get out of Waianae. I was feeling very trapped by Waianae at that time. But we were lucky because we had the ocean there. So I always had an appreciation for ocean. I always had an appreciation for stories, and was always outdoor. I was always outdoors. Just love to be either in the ocean or hiking. Kaena Point, went there a lot. For those who are familiar with the Waianae area, worked in the lo'i, very interested in like fish ponds, just being outside, just love doing that. Went to the Army, came back, went to school at Leeward Community College, and then got a 2-year degree in arts, associate in arts. And then came to Hilo, got a 4-year degree in marine science. When that was PAL, got an opportunity to go, because I was in the Hawaiian Army National Guard, which helped to pay for my college. Got an opportunity to go fly helicopters. So I've been trying to do that for about 3 years. And then the National Guard called me up right after I graduated and said, "We have a slot if you want to go." And I'm like 30. I'm kind of older for that, right? And I was like, "Oh, I'd never forgive myself if we don't try." So we went, got married my wife, and then we went to Fort Rucker, Alabama for about 1.5 years. Learned how to fly helicopters, came back and flew Black Hawk helicopters, and got a job doing conservation work with the Forest Service. So I actually started to learn all the stories about the plants, and it's really, I think Blair too is like we're plant people. Like I just love the stories about the plants, and the more I learned, the more interested I got. Addictive, kind of like Hina in our story. Like I can't help myself. I like Google stuff about the plants and everything. So did that. The 4-year degree was in '98, and then worked for about 8 years with the Forest Service, and then went to grad school at Hilo under the conservation biology program, and got a master's there in science working on gorse management using shade, which is that gorse is that weed that's up on Mauna Road with the yellow flower. Kind of smells like coconut. But excuse me. So I did my grad research on that, and I got a master's degree that way. And then went back to the Forest Service and hit the glass ceiling. Like didn't feel could move anywhere. I asked for a promotion within the Forest Service, and they weren't doing it. And so I told them, "I'm gonna leave. I'm telling you, I'm gonna go. You better like support me, or I'm out of here." Kind of like in any relationship. And they said nope. And so I said, "Okay, bye." And then I worked as a land manager for Office of Hawaiian Affairs at Waukeleo, which is that big forest behind Pahoa, in between there and Kilauea, for a little while. And then this job didn't exist. So like I'm the first one that has this watershed coordinator job for Mauna Kea, and they hired me in 2011. So this job came up, and I applied. And decided to move from helping to manage Waukeleo Puna. Waukele is interesting too. So Waukele it means watershed. It basically means the watershed of Puna. So like, and that's one of those. Remember I was talking to you guys about the vowel. So the different vowel will tell you the function of those areas, the traditional functions. So like automatically you're thinking, well, if it's a watershed, then I wouldn't want to build, I wouldn't want to build a town there, because then you're messing with the water, right? And so decided to work up on Mauna Kea, and I've been doing that ever since 2011. And so I've been the Mauna Kea Watershed Alliance coordinator since then. Built a team, built the infrastructure so we can do management work. For watershed work, the basic recipe for watershed work in Hawaii, there's 10 of us. We're part of the Hawaii Association of Watershed Partnerships. The basic recipe is build fence to protect native forests or do restoration. Somehow manage the feral, non-native feral ungulates or hoofed animals that are in there, and then the weeds, and then do monitoring. But we also do environmental education and restoration, that type of thing. So we plant native trees strategically, and so we pick the spots to do it based on what the partnership wants to do. Yeah, so I've been doing that for close to 10 years. It's a really good job. It's right in line with, I feel very good about it. I feel it's very pono. But I also feel like this is what, if I had known like when I was a kid, this is what I love to do. And it's like, I can do it you don't make a whole lot of money, but it's really rewarding work, and you feel good about the work you do. It's enough to get by.
So thank you, Cheyenne. I have one more question. So this, we're in John's biology class, right, John? And this is Yeah, this is a
Correct?
STEM program,
Okay.
but I think the longer I stay in conservation, I see how closely linked culture and conservation of the environment are linked. Um, how would you say that learning about Hawaiian culture can help with the conservation of nature?
Oh, yeah, good question.
It's a
So for
tough one.
me, and I think it applies to anybody really who's interested and wants to learn. Um, but when I learn about the under the all of the cultural stuff, that's kind of the foundation, just because of the places that we live in. The more I learn, the more it makes sense to me. It's like, and I'm very logical. I'm a very logical human. Um, the When I was in the army, there was a time when they would call me Spock, just because of the way that I approach challenges. It's very analytical, and so like the all of the cultural things that I've been learning over the years, they really are they make sense and they're in line. They're part of the in line with the conservation that we do. And really, I think the end part of it is just that you become really intimate with your places. Like you get just so connected to these places, and you feel like the understanding and the way that the place communicates with you it's strong. Like it almost feels like like you can communicate with your spaces and the places that you are around, and they tell you stuff, and it's a very pure communication. There's like nothing hidden. There's no like agenda. You just really feel like I think it's just the connection, like that cord that ties us all to our places. Um, like the more you care for that cord through the understanding, the more intimate you are with those spaces.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, it can be a magical life, like seeing the clouds and like, oh, what kind of cloud is that? And there's a really like, have you guys ever seen a lenticular cloud? You guys know what that looks like? I had learned about it in the army, but it's basically when you look at a mountain and then there's kind of a reflection of a mountain, but it's in a cloud formation directly above the mountain. That's called in Hawaii, one of the names for that cloud is called Kane Pua Hio Hio. And so Hio Hio is like a twisting. And so like, when the volcano erupts and it goes into the ocean and you get these twisters that come just from that interaction of that heat in the cold of the water. It makes like these kind of those are all Hio Hio. And so like so if you acknowledge and you see that cloud and it has a name, Kane Pua Hio Hio. In my mind, I already know like, oh, so there's winds. I can count. I know that if I go in that area, there's going to be extreme up and down winds. That's one of the characteristics of that area. Or if it's a pua'a cloud, then you know that the rain's coming. So you just start to get this really, it feels really good just to be that connected to your places and your spaces and to apply that to your work. Yeah, because I mean, because you are the being that you are, any information that you can get that comes in to helps you make decisions, it's all, I mean, it's all useful, right? So really, it's just been really connecting all those things. I've never felt like there's a conflict in the thinking. I always feel like it's all kind of in line, all these things that we're learning, and I love to share with other people too, just to, if they're thinking about it, the best outcome is that you're interested and then you want to learn more about your places. And yeah, and stories are such a natural way of communicating with each other. I see people doing it all the time, my uncles, man, and I'm all like, is this story about me? Am I that hermit crab? Am I the hermit crab in that story? But yeah, so just a good excellent way to communicate and just stay connected to each other and our places.